been living with ghosts since I was 8 years old, so I have lots of stories. I've been told by my doctors, therapists, friends, and family that I have a sixth sense of sorts. I'm able to see the world between living and dead. I don't call it a superpower. I'd call it a curse. This first incident that I want to tell you about happened at school almost a year ago. I had lunch at McDonald's, and I was almost late for my next class, so I had to rush back. When I entered the school, something felt off, but not enough for serious concern. Since everyone was already in class, I jogged up both flights of stairs to the hall for nursing classes. As I continued down the hall, I saw a man walking towards me with his head down. When we passed one another, he bumped into me very hard, knocking me onto the ground. By the time I stood up, I was both scared and angry, but the man was gone, so I went to class. Afterward, I had one more class, but I began feeling uneasy once I sat down. I had a stomachache, and I felt like I might get super sick any second. I kept my head down, and when the class was dismissed, everyone left except one classmate, the teacher, and myself. The other student asked me if I was okay, and slowly lifting my head, I started to say yes, but then I realized something else was in the room with us. It looked like some kind of demon, almost 6'5" tall, horns, purple-esque skin, and weird appendages. I just stood up and ran out of the classroom without another word. It probably looked weird to the others, but I couldn't tell them what I saw. I felt sick. I don't know what it wanted, but it scared the shit out of me. For the next incident I want to share, you should probably know that I'm an atheist and that I have friends from many cultural backgrounds. I think the angel of death is a religious thing, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I've had a few encounters with a woman, and even though it's scary, she's one of the friendliest ghosts I've ever seen. She was almost 10 feet tall, had pale skin, holes for eyes, a floor-length black robe, extremely long dark hair, and she hovered above the ground. She didn't smell bad, and she only made slight whisper sounds, like she was talking to herself. My first encounter with her was 10 years ago, when I was still doing parkour with a friend. I was never that great, but my friend was amazing. I still can't believe some of the jumps he made. One day, he and I were next to a very tall retirement home complex when we saw a husband and wife leave the building crying. We asked if they were okay, and we learned that the woman's mother was ill. They were outside waiting for an ambulance to arrive. When we finally heard the sirens, we quickly realized the EMTs didn't realize how to get into the complex. So my friend hopped on his bike and guided them in. Afterward, we watched from a distance as the woman was wheeled out on a stretcher and placed into the ambulance. That's when I first saw the woman I previously described, though at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Life continued as normal, and now we can jump to August 2020. I got a bad case of burnout and stopped going to school because I cared too much about others and too little about myself. Oops. I was on my way to bed late one night, and the house was completely silent. My sister, who's 4 years older than me, was already asleep in her room. But when I opened my bedroom door, I saw her door was open. That in itself was pretty weird. She always slept with her door closed. I looked in to see a figure hunched over her, and I quickly ran to the bathroom where I locked myself inside. I repeated to myself, "This isn't real, this isn't real," until the words stopped making sense. Then I emptied my bladder and my stomach before deciding to return to bed. When I opened the door, my sister's door was closed, and the figure was standing in my doorway, looking at me. Not knowing what to do, I stepped back to my sister's door and watched in horror as the figure moved upstairs to my parents' room. I darted into my room, turned on the lights, locked the door, and waited. I heard the figure moving around in my parents' room, and I heard it close their door when it left. Then I heard it go down the stairs, through the kitchen, into the garage, before finally leaving. I went downstairs to check things out, but there was nothing. It just left. Was it the angel, or was it a weird ghost? It's almost like it was looking for something. The reason I say this is my most friendly ghost is because most try to hurt me, or give me headaches. Talking about this stuff, it always makes me tired too. Just remember, every person has their own unique stories, so treat them that way. Also, one last tip. If you meet a ghost, do not make eye contact. If you do, it'll make them happy because they can now break you. They can make you hate anything, even yourself. Bye. I don't know what a lot of people think demons look like, or if they just imagine them internal, or what. But I can tell you that I have in fact seen demons. I know that I did, and also my friend Sarah from 3rd grade at St. John's Catholic School. I'd been at the school all of 6 months when this happened. I was already feeling like an outsider. It was my first time in a private school, so adjusting was hard. Oh, and there was also the minor detail that I wasn't remotely religious, neither was my mom. Instead, it was my new stepdad's idea to enroll me at St. John's. My mom had little of a spine, so she agreed. I'm sorry if that's rude, but it's true. For better or for worse, she's heard it a time or two, so not always from me either. Anyway, the story. 6 months into this deal, I had 2 friends, Sarah and Kelly, both my age, both in my class. Sarah was wily, charismatic. Kelly was basically a perfect student, a model Christian. I was somewhere right in the middle, a follower. Sarah especially liked to get lost. I say that with air quotes because she was intentionally hiding. She got kicks out of teachers having to shut things down and find her, and now me. One day, a busy day for Catholics, in fact, since it was indeed Ash Wednesday Mass, we decided to execute one of her plans. The school and the church itself weren't connected. They just sat in the same lot as one another, but 2 separate buildings. So Mass was going to take place in the church, but we were currently in the school building. Sarah says that when the class leaves, we should all pick a place to hide and come out once they've left to the other building. Kelly immediately shuts the idea down, but I, being the follower I am, I agree to Sarah's plan. As all the classes shuffle down the halls toward the exit to the church, I tuck myself behind a small wall where I know a class is already vacated. I wait for the sound of footsteps to stop. Almost on cue, Sarah and I jump out from our concealed locations and just start laughing hysterically. Then we quickly shut ourselves up and run back to the classroom. I will say, it was notably strange. Before we got to the door, I was scared. As we approached the door, Sarah was ahead of me. She stopped, so I stopped. I watched her, just standing frozen in place, staring into the classroom. My fear was now growing, yet I still had no idea why I was afraid. Sarah removes herself from the doorway, keeping her eyes focused on something inside. As soon as she removes her gaze, she grabs my hand and starts running us back in the direction we'd come from. Was she trying to scare me? I don't know, but it was working. I stopped us before the exit and I demanded Sarah tell me what was going on. Suddenly, I was more afraid of being in trouble than whatever was inside the classroom. She can hardly shape her words, but she manages to tell me that she saw a nun inside that classroom. More specifically, not a nice nun, a bad-faced nun. Most of you, some of you, know that nuns don't typically teach in Catholic school anymore. That's sort of an old school thing. When I was in school, the 90s, and today, the teachers just look like normal teachers. It really wasn't more common for a Catholic school kid like me to see a nun than a public school kid in the same area. In general, nuns are and have been for some time on a steady decline. All this to say that I was sure Sarah was messing with me. I told Sarah as much, adding that it wasn't possible. Whatever I said, we now felt emboldened as we made our way back down the hallway toward the class. Again, that feeling. But I ignored it, and instead this time, I went first. Nothing. Sarah follows behind me as she sees I'm unenthused. She also sees nothing. The air, though, is actually palpable. It's like we can't move forward, and we can't move backwards. I can feel that Sarah feels the same sense of dread that I do. I turn to look at her, and I can see that she's terrified. But more than that, I can see just behind her the face of a horrible woman. There's nothing to accompany the vision but a face. No body, no habit, just a horrible face, sitting side by side with my friend's face. I scream. Sarah screams. Closing my eyes, we run and somehow manage to get to the exit. This time, we don't hesitate to run through the doors. We aren't shy of making a scene. We definitely feared what was inside far more than any punishment at this point. Truthfully, I hardly remember the repercussions for running off to begin with. The real punishment was with whatever we faced that day. Sarah told me the next day, or maybe the next few days, she walked away with actual scratches from the whole thing. How, I'd asked. She said she felt heat on her back just before we screamed. But it was her mother who saw them. She was upset with her, demanding that she tell her who did this to her. I know for a fact that she ended up lying to her mother in the end. She feared that telling her about a demonic nun, it would somehow get her banished from life. Super sad, but actually probably true. I asked her, what did the nun look like? What made her not nice? When she told me, I knew we'd definitely seen the same face. My friend and I lost touch just after grade 5. For some reason, I stayed at St. John's for the better part of my schooling, and I never did see the nun again, or any other strange faces. Of course, I was never looking for her. If anything, I was avoiding her at all costs. I probably became a better student. I never passed the story on or even told anyone what happened. Because as much as it makes for a great story, it always felt like telling it there, inside those walls, was somehow bad luck, and I really needed all the good luck I could get during those years.